Hello, everyone. Or do I mean, hello, everyone. How are you? All right. Well, today, because Halloween is approaching, I did say that I would tell you a scary ghost story. But this one actually is not a ghost story, it is a tale. And it's actually a true tale. It's a true tale that I experienced when I was a kid. So here's the story. So when I was a kid, it was when I don't know, I must have been like 13, maybe 14, or 12, 13, maybe 14. But what had happened is we all went over to a friend's house. We'd all kind of gone out and done things for Halloween, like when I was a kid, I used to take my little brothers and sisters for the first part, when it was still kind of light outside, and I would take them to go trick or treating. I'd still be all dressed up and everything, but we had kind of a big family, and so sometimes I would help with the older kids and things like that, so they could cross 27th South. I remember that was the scary thing. But this year was different. I got to go over and spend the night basically over at a friend's house, and they had a bunch of people over. It was like a Halloween sleepover, and so we went, and it was I'm not gonna name any names, but it was a lady friend of ours, so a young girl, about our age, so probably the same, about 13, 14. But her parents let us come over to the house. And so there's not a huge group of kids. I would say there's probably about 10 of us, tops. I think they try to even it out so there's the same amount of boys and girls. But we were all in the basement of her house. And we were all just sitting around talking. We had our costumes on and still and everything like that. I remember she dressed up as a witch. I don't remember what I dressed up as. I think I tried to be a werewolf that year, but again with the glasses, it was always kind of disappointing. But anyway, so we're all at her house, and people start telling ghost stories. And different stories that some people had heard were true, and some stories that they'd heard that people weren't. And so there was one guy in the party. I was one of the younger people that were there, but one of the guys there started telling about a story about a graveyard that was, or a cemetery really. It was right near where this lady lived, and I have grandparents that are buried there now. At the time, I didn't know anybody that was buried there. But the guy was saying, he started telling a story about how there's a grave there that a woman was buried in, and she's by herself. There's not a plot for her husband, and people believe that she was a witch. And that if you go out at midnight and stand on her grave, she will reach up from underneath and grab you by the legs from her grave and drag you down to Hades with her. And that's how the story goes. And the girl who was, it was her house and she was dressed up as a witch. She's like, yeah, I've lived here for a long time and I've heard stories like that. She's like, that's nonsense. And everybody kept saying, I know I've kind of heard that it's true too, and people were kind of engaging that way, saying, oh, no, I've heard it's true, I've heard this, and, everybody's had their own ghost stories and things like that. And so, she was adamant, though, that it was like, no, this is nothing. And, so finally the guy, he was like, oh, so you're not afraid at all about this? And she's like, no, there's nothing to be scared of. It's a tale. And he's like, yeah, I'm sure. It's just a story. Like, which is, pretty easy for us all to sit here and be like, oh, we're not scared, we're inside. And, he really started kind of laying it on thick to try to, and he's like, I think we should go. Let's go at midnight. He's like, it's Halloween night. What better time to go to a graveyard than tonight? and you can prove your theory. And she didn't balk. She was pretty tough. She was like, no, okay, let's do this. And so we all got ready to go around midnight, and we're all getting ready to leave. And there was a downstairs back door, so we knew we couldn't go out the front door, or the parents would hear, and then we'd get in trouble. So, and we didn't want anybody to hear, so we just got up and we snuck out the back door. But as we were going, there was like a downstairs kitchen, and the guy that was there, he said, "You need to take this," and he handed her a knife. He said, "There's none of us are gonna go up there with you, so take this knife and plunge it into the witch's grave, and then this way we'll know for sure that you actually went." She was like, "Okay, whatever." And so she grabbed the knife, and we started heading out. And I remember that walk down. Like, it was a long walk because we all just walked all the way down. I'm still kind of amazed that nobody like kind of pulled us over, because it's a bunch of kids out at midnight, and we're all still dressed up in our Halloween stuff. And so we're all walking down, and I could tell, like, at first she was really confident as we were walking down, but like I said, I was one of the younger, so I was just more observing. And as I was looking around, I kind of looked, and I could see that she was quite nervous. And so what I did was that I decided, I'm just going to watch this whole situation and see how it kind of plays out. And there we are, walking down, and you can see her getting kind of clammier and whiter as she walks along the road. And then we get to the iron gates, and there's these iron gates right up front. And it's a beautiful cemetery, but you have to open up these gates. And so we were all like, well, we're here, and you could tell it was just different once you're actually there. Like, you're right by these gates. And so you're ready to go in, and so we open up the gates, and just, and we didn't open much because she wasn't a huge person, so we didn't need a lot of space to have her get through, and we didn't want anybody to hear us either. And so basically they're like, okay, here you go ahead. And she had her knife, and she dropped it on the ground. She was trembling so hard, and people were actually kind of laughing, like, "Oh, you're really scared, aren't you?" And she's like, "No, it was just an accident." And she was putting on a brave face, but I could see as she was walking towards the grave, I could see her. She was shivering, and the light just from there, like the light that the moon played on those gates, and these uneven shadows that were all around. I mean, it just gave this really eerie feel. And there was a bit of a haze and a fog because it was midnight and it was, colder weather. And I could hear her as she was going up, like, just talking to herself. It's just a story. It's just a stupid story. Don't worry about it. It's just a story. And, so we decided to, let her go do her thing, and watched her walk all the way up there. And watched her as, and it just seemed like it took forever, because we could hear her kind of talking to herself, but then it kind of disappeared into the darkness, and we couldn't hear as much anymore. And then, we waited, and we waited, and finally we heard, "Take that, you old witch! I got you!" And we all just kind of stood there, and we couldn't really. The grave was pretty far off, but we could hear that. And then suddenly we heard screaming, like this shrill, loud screaming. And then the screaming was over. We didn't know what to do, and we were all too afraid to go in there. So we asked a group of two of people in our party to go run back. And we said, "You need to go and get somebody to call the police, tell them where we're at, but you need to go back right now." And it took a while, but finally, we mustered up the courage, and we went up there. And there she was. She was sprawled out on the grave, lying down face first. Well, not face first, I mean, like, on her cheek. She was rolled over on her cheek, and she had a scream on her face. And it took us a while to get up there because by the time we got up there and actually found her there, then we saw the police lights. And they came up, and there she was, just lying there. We didn't know till later, but she was lying there. She had died. And we found out what happened after, that she must have really believed that the witch had grabbed her by the ankles to drag her down to Hades. But what had happened was, is as she was sitting up there, she took the knife and she put it into the grave. What she didn't know is she stabbed it into her dress, her witch's dress. And as she turned to walk away, she thought that she was being held by the witch. And it scared her to death, to where she fell down and died right there at midnight on that graveyard. And that is my story! Okay, it's not really a true story. I made up the part that it was about me and my friends. It's actually a story from Scary Stories You Can Tell in the Dark. It's a story called The Dare. So maybe at some point something like this happened. It could be like an urban legend or something like that. But that is my scary story. I have more of them, but we'll stay with this one for now. If you want another one before Halloween time, I will definitely make one for you. Anyway, I'll see you later, everyone.